Hello and welcome to BBC World News. I'm Martine Dennis.
And I'm Alice Baxter. The headlines.
Shocking evidence of homophobic violence in Europe. A report finds a quarter of gay people have been attacked or threatened with violence. President Obama says the US will not intervene alone in Syria. This as the BBC sees what appears to be evidence of the use of poisonous gas. And we meet the man who's going to spend 60 days perched on a rock in the middle of the ocean, all for a good cause.
And Dell profits collapse as smartphones and tablets continue to batter the PC industry. Hello there. Well, also coming up for you a bit later in business, mega ships in search of cargo. Container giant Maersk counts the cost of slumping global trade.
But first, the debate over the use of chemical weapons in Syria's conflict. On Thursday night, President Obama told the world the United States has seen evidence of their use.
The use of chemical weapons are something that the civilized world has recognized should be out of bounds. And, as we gather more evidence and work together, my intention is to make sure that we're presenting everything that we know to the international community as an additional reason, an additional mechanism for the international community to put all the pressure that they can on the Assad regime.
Well, the President's comments came as a BBC team became the first Western journalist to reach the site of what appeared to be an attack last month. Both the government and the rebels deny using such weapons, but our correspondent Ian Pannell and cameraman Darren Conway were investigating an incident in the town of Sarakeb. Now, that's close to Aleppo in the north of the country. Their report does contain some distressing images.
The war in Syria hangs heavy with tales of appalling violence, of massacres and abuse. But for Britain and America, it's alleged chemical attacks that cross a red line and raise the spectre of military intervention.
On the 29th of April, Sarakeb came under attack from government military positions about 5 miles in that direction. Using eyewitness testimony and video taken on the day, we tried to piece together what happened. The filming started right here from this vantage point as the artillery shells landed just on the other side of the building. It's a day that ended with what's claimed to be a chemical weapons attack.
Allahu Akbar. A local activist gave us this footage. He says it was taken as the shells landed. We can't verify these images, but all the videos you're going to see were apparently taken on the same day by different people we met. A helicopter was spotted high above the town. Eyewitnesses allege at least 2 canisters were dropped from it. They say it was shortly after they landed that casualties started to arrive at Sarakeb Hospital. 8 people were admitted, apparently with similar symptoms. They appear to be vomiting with breathing problems. The worst affected was Mariam Khatib. Relatives claim a device had landed in her garden. Videos appear to show her unconscious with constricted pupils. Doctors who treated her claim she had signs of exposure to chemical agents. The mother of 8 died later that day. Her daughter lies nearby. Her tongue appears distended. She's frothing at the mouth. She, like most of the victims, responded to treatment. Her sons were also on the scene and say they had to be treated. Again, they apparently suffered respiratory and vision problems and appear to have constricted pupils. Mohammed is the eldest son. He says he'd tried to help his mother, but she collapsed in his arms.
It was a horrible, suffocating smell. You couldn't breathe at all. Your body would become really tired. You'd lose all senses. You'd feel like you were dead. You couldn't even see. I couldn't see anything for 3 or 4 days.
We were taken to the house by one of her nephews. He showed us where the device is said to have landed. Samples from here and from the victims have been sent to Britain, France, Turkey and America. Test results are pending. A British chemical expert has looked at this material and says there's strong but incomplete evidence a nerve agent was used. 4 of the patients were brought here, to a hospital near the border. Dr. Juma treated them. They were put through decontamination and were given atropine to treat their symptoms. But it was too late for Mariam Khatib.
The symptoms she displayed, unconsciousness, vomiting, pinpoint pupils, they all correspond to poison gas exposure. They often match organophosphate poisoning. It has many derivatives, one of which is sarin gas. We had our doubts, but we can't be sure until we analyze it.
Today, Mohammed lives in a tent outside town. He says he's too afraid to return to the house. For people like him, the real issue isn't how people are killed, it's death itself. And what they say is the indifference of the world to their plight. Ian Pannell, BBC News, in Syria.
Well, just before that report, we saw President Obama talking about how best to end the conflict in Syria. And, of course, he's been having meetings with the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan at the White House. Well, with me now is Sharif Ishler. He's from the BBC Turkish service. And, Sharif, of all of Syria's neighbouring countries, perhaps it's Turkey who is suffering the most pressure, both in terms of the humanitarian issue, more than 120,000 refugees, and, of course, on the military side as well, because they've had rocket attacks come over and onto Turkish soil, plus last weekend's car bombs, which killed several people.
Well, that's actually very true, because Turkey, as you might remember, last year, one of its jets was shot down over the Mediterranean, and then some artillery shells landed within Turkish territory, and then there was a car bombs last weekend. Now, Turkey is under incredible pressure domestically, because the people believe that it is the government's Syria policies that have caused the car bombs, in essence, and that if Turkey had not been so closely involved, then perhaps it would probably be on a safer side at the moment. And then militaristically, one can't really do much without the proper support of the international community. So Turkey is unable to take any military action either. So a normally blunt and outspoken Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkish Prime Minister, was somewhat subdued and quiet in Washington yesterday.
Well, let's hear what the Prime Minister himself had to say.
Our goal is to see the tyranny and the dictatorship go away in Syria and be replaced with democracy. And I think there is a collective responsibility on the part of all countries that believe in democracy. And this is what we will all continue to do.
So it's not exactly clear, is it, where they're standing at the moment? But what do you expect, certainly from the Turkish Prime Minister's side, what do you expect his next point of action to be?
I think on his immediate request will be one of I think he will ask for aid from the USA or support in dealing with the refugee crisis, because Turkey has, as you said, an incredible amount of Syrian refugees within its territory. So it will be expecting the US to provide support with the refugee crisis. But in the longer run, now that the Russian and US-led conference is coming together, it will probably be waiting to see whether a political or a diplomatic solution can be achieved on the question of Syria. And if all else fails, then it will probably be back to a drawing board for Turkey.
Well, very interesting times, aren't they, in terms of the Syrian conflict. Thank you very much for now. Sharif Ishler from the BBC's Turkish service. And, of course, we'll keep you right up to date with all the developments concerning the conflict in Syria here at BBC World News. Now, let's move on to The results of the biggest ever study into homophobic attacks here in Europe are being released today. Now, they show some worrying trends, and ministers from across the continent are meeting in the Netherlands to call for a European approach to protecting gay rights. Anna Holligan reports now from The Hague.
Across Europe's non-heterosexual society, 93,000 people were questioned about their experiences of hate crimes and discrimination. In the last 5 years, more than a quarter had been attacked or threatened with violence. Worryingly for the authorities, more than half said they didn't even bother reporting the attacks because they didn't believe it would make any difference. At school, 2 out of 3 pupils who completed the study said they tried to hide or disguise the fact they were gay. There is significant disparity in gay rights laws depending on which European nation you're in. In France, gay marriage was eventually legalised less than a month ago. In Portugal on Friday, Parliament will be debating a draft legislation on gay adoption. Both of those rights have been allowed in the Netherlands for more than a decade. Queen Maxima came to celebrate the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia.
This is Queen Maxima's first big public engagement since her husband Wilhelm Alexander became king. It's Maxima's vocal support of gay rights, which is one of the things which has so endeared her to this nation and gained her such admiration in a country which has a tradition associated with being one of the most gay-friendly countries in the world.
We were the first country that introduced same-sex marriage, but we also see that we still have a lot of problems we face. For example, we still have youngsters that are confronted with bullying at school, and we have gays that have to leave their community because they're punished or, you know, they are bullied by neighbors.
300 politicians and specialists have come to The Hague to talk preemptive action and protection and try to find ways to stop people from being attacked or discriminated against on the basis of their sexuality on the streets of The Hague and beyond. Anna Holligan, BBC News in The Hague.
Now, the authorities in New York say they've smashed a cigarette smuggling ring and have arrested 15 people of Palestinian origin, some with links to known terrorists. Now, it's being claimed the men sold $55 million worth of untaxed cigarettes smuggled from Virginia. Cricket fans in India have been protesting after Delhi police arrested 3 players on suspicion of fixing parts of cricket matches in the Indian Premier League. Fans burned pictures and effigies of the players. Now, police are accusing some of them of conceding at least 13 runs in one game in return for $70,000. Clothing manufacturers in Bangladesh say they're reopening hundreds of factories after a series of strikes. Workers in the production hubs outside the capital, Dhaka, took industrial action over poor safety conditions. This follows that factory collapse that killed over 1,000 workers. Now the government's issued assurances over improved safety and security after days of talks with the trade unions. The former NASCAR driver Dick Trickle has died at age 71. The authorities in the US say he appears to have shot himself. Trickle became known by driving in the short track category of races and went on to compete in NASCAR's Winston Cup Series. He was named Rookie of the Year at the age of 48 and gained a cult status among fans of NASCAR racing. Alice is here with the business news, and a clear case of not keeping up with the times for Dell, isn't it?
That's right. More evidence about the declining sales of personal computers came out late on Thursday, as Martin was just saying. It's in steep decline as an industry as a whole. Well, the first quarter of this year saw the biggest slump in PC sales since records began, and as we shift to ever smaller devices like smartphones and tablets, of course. Well, now PC giant Dell has revealed its profits all but collapsed in the last 3 months. Dell says profits plunged a staggering 79% in the 3 months to the beginning of May, compared with the same period last year. Well, that was way worse than Wall Street was even expecting. Dell, though, did see a rise in revenue from providing services to businesses, what it calls enterprise solutions. Well, that's the area founder and CEO Michael Dell is now pinning his hopes to for the future of the company. He's trying to buy back the company in a $24 billion buyout. But his biggest shareholder, Carl Icahn, is fighting him all the way, saying the offer undervalues the company. Now, some other story that we're across for you today is labour unrest in South Africa's mines about to erupt again. Workers at Anglo American Platinum are due to walk out on strike today over plans to cut up to 6,000 jobs. Well, earlier this week, rival Lonmin was hit also by a 2-day strike as the industry prepares for wage negotiations that have been called the toughest since the end of apartheid in 1994. Mining companies are cutting back in the face of falling commodity prices. Well, they're also facing rising union militancy amid worker anger about rising income inequality. More than 50 people were killed last year in violence in South Africa's mining communities. Well, fears of a return to the unrest have pushed the country's currency to a 4-year low this week. Now, this beast behind me, he is called Marco Polo, and at 400 meters long and capable of carrying 190,000 tons of cargo. It's the largest container ship in the world. At least it was until the end of last year. Its owner, Danish shipping line Maersk, is about to take delivery of 20 even bigger ones. And here they are under construction currently in South Korea. Well, it's all part of a global battle for dominance between shipping companies. Unfortunately, since they ordered these mega ships, trade between Asia and Europe has slumped, and Maersk is set to report a steep fall in profits a little bit later today. More on all of those stories and much more for you, Martin, in about 20 minutes' time. Thanks.
See you then, Alice. Thank you. Now, let's go to Bangladesh and get the very latest on the situation there, because you may remember people there have been bracing themselves for what was a cyclone.